I always believed our marriage was a fortress, built on trust and shared dreams. Emily and I had been together for 12 years, married for 9. Our home in suburban Maplewood was a cozy haven. 2 stories, a garden I tended obsessively, and a kitchen where Emily's laughter once echoed as she baked. We weren't perfect. No couple is. There were late nights at my accounting firm, her long hours as a graphic designer, and the quiet strain of a childless life we hadn't planned. But we had love, or so I thought. I'd catch her smiling at me over coffee, her hazel eyes warm, and feel like the luckiest man alive. That autumn, though, something shifted. It was subtle at first, her phone buzzing more often, her gaze lingering elsewhere. She'd laugh at messages she didn't share, claiming they were work stuff. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was my Emily, the woman who'd cried in my arms when her father passed, who'd danced with me in the rain on our 5th anniversary. But the signs grew harder to ignore. She'd leave the room to take calls, her voice low and secretive. She started wearing perfume I didn't recognize, a sharp, floral scent that clung to her clothes. One evening, I found her in the living room, typing furiously on her laptop. When I asked what she was working on, she snapped the screen shut and said, "Just a client project." Her tone was sharp, defensive. I brushed it off, but a knot formed in my chest. That night, as she slept, I stared at the ceiling, replaying her words, her distance. I wasn't a suspicious man by nature, but doubt is a seed that grows in silence. I began to notice her late nights at the office, her sudden interest in weekend team-building retreats. The fortress of our marriage felt like it was crumbling, and I was helpless to stop it. I told myself I was paranoid. Emily wouldn't betray me, not after all we'd built together. But the knot in my chest tightened, and I started paying attention, really paying attention. Her phone was always locked now, her purse zipped tight. She'd flinch when I touched her unexpectedly, as if my hands carried an accusation. I didn't want to believe it, but the truth was clawing its way to the surface. I needed to know. I needed to see the crack in our foundation before it swallowed me whole. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but desperation makes a man do ugly things. One afternoon, while Emily was at a client meeting, I borrowed her spare phone charger. It was an excuse to access her cloud backup, something I'd helped her set up years ago. My hands shook as I logged in from my laptop, the screen glowing with files I had no right to see. There were photos, messages, emails, pieces of her life she'd kept from me. I scrolled through mundane work chats, then froze. A folder labeled Inspiration held images that weren't design mock-ups. They were of her, smiling in places I didn't recognize, with a man I did. His name was Daniel, a coworker she'd mentioned casually. "Oh, he's just the new art director," she'd said, waving it off. But these photos told a different story. Daniel's arm around her waist at a rooftop bar, her head on his shoulder in a park. The timestamps spanned months, months of lies. My stomach churned as I opened their messages. "Can't stop thinking about you," he wrote. "Meet me tonight," she replied. My vision blurred, not from tears but from rage. A slow-burning fire I didn't know I could feel. I cross-referenced dates. Her retreats aligned with hotel bookings in her emails. Her late nights matched messages about stolen moments in his apartment. Every excuse she'd fed me was a thread in a tapestry of deceit. I sat there numb as the clock ticked past midnight. When she came home, smelling of that unfamiliar perfume, I said nothing. Couldn't. The truth was a blade in my chest, and speaking would only make it twist. I started watching her more closely, noting every lie. She'd kiss my cheek before leaving, her lips cold, and I'd wonder where they'd been hours before. I wasn't sleeping anymore. The betrayal consumed me, but I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed proof that couldn't be denied, something she couldn't spin into another lie. I bought a small GPS tracker and slipped it into her car's glove compartment. Felt like a violation, but so was her betrayal. The device pinged her locations: his apartment, a cafe, a motel on the edge of town. Each notification was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. Living with Emily became a performance. I played the dutiful husband, cooking dinner, asking about her day, all while my heart was a furnace of anger. She didn't notice my strain. She was too wrapped up in her secret life. Her smiles were brighter now, but they weren't for me. They were for him, for the thrill of her deception. I wondered how she justified it. Did she tell herself I was boring? That I didn't deserve her? Or did she not think of me at all? The GPS tracker painted a vivid picture. She'd visit Daniel 3, sometimes 4 times a week. I checked the app while she showered, her humming drifting through the bathroom door. Each ping was a reminder of her betrayal, but it also fueled my resolve. I started documenting everything, screenshots of messages, photos from her cloud, timestamps from the tracker. I built a dossier, not for a confrontation but for something bigger. I didn't know what yet, but the idea of revenge was taking root, a dark seed mirroring the doubt she'd planted. I tested her subtly. Over dinner, I'd mention a new restaurant near Daniel's apartment. Her face would tighten, her fork pausing midair. "Oh, I haven't been there," she'd say too quickly. I'd nod, hiding my disgust. I wondered how long she'd planned to keep this up. Forever? Until she left me for him? The thought made my blood boil, but I kept my mask in place. I needed her to think I was clueless, the oblivious husband she could manipulate. One night, she came home late, her hair slightly mussed, her blouse wrinkled. "Rough day," she sighed, kicking off her shoes. I smiled, offering her wine, while my mind screamed, "Liar." I imagined confronting her, watching her squirm, but I held back. A simple confrontation wasn't enough. She'd hurt me in a way I never thought possible, and I wanted her to feel that pain tenfold. I didn't know how yet, but I'd find a way to make her regret every moment she spent with him. Revenge is a quiet architect, building its plans in the shadows. I didn't want to just hurt Emily. I wanted her to understand the depth of her betrayal. I wanted her world to unravel as mine had. But I needed to be careful, calculated. A sloppy outburst would only give her the upper hand, let her paint me as the villain. So, I dug deeper, learning everything I could about Daniel. His LinkedIn profile was polished, boasting awards and connections. His social media showed a charming, carefree man, perfect for stealing someone's wife. I hired a private investigator, a discreet man named Carl who didn't ask questions. Carl tailed Daniel, uncovering habits Emily's messages hadn't revealed. Daniel was married too, with a wife named Laura and a toddler son. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 cheaters, building their affair on the ruins of 2 families. Carl's photos showed them together, laughing, touching, oblivious to the lens capturing their betrayal. I kept the photos in a locked folder, each one a brick in the structure of my revenge. I considered exposing them publicly, but that felt too simple. A social media post or an email to their coworkers might shame them, but it wouldn't last. I wanted something that would linger, something that would haunt them. I started researching their lives, their vulnerabilities. Emily valued her career. It was her identity. Daniel seemed to thrive on his reputation, his charm. If I could dismantle those, I could hit them where it hurt most. I began planting seeds. I anonymously tipped off Emily's boss about unprofessional conduct during her retreats, vague enough to raise questions without implicating me. I sent similar tips to Daniel's firm, hinting at misuse of company time. Neither would lose their jobs immediately, but the scrutiny would make them sweat. I wanted them paranoid, looking over their shoulders, wondering who knew. It was only the beginning, but it felt good to act, to reclaim some control. My nights were spent plotting, my days pretending. Emily noticed my distraction once, asking if I was okay. I lied just as she had, and she accepted it. The first real blow came unexpectedly. Carl called me one evening, his voice low. "Got something you'll want to see," he said. He'd caught Emily and Daniel at a motel, their cars parked side by side. But that wasn't the news. Laura, Daniel's wife, had shown up, her face furious as she banged on the motel door. Carl's photos captured the chaos. Emily's shock, Daniel's panic, Laura's tears. Apparently, Laura had found suspicious texts and followed him. The confrontation was public, messy, and perfect. I didn't orchestrate Laura's discovery, but it was a gift. Emily came home that night, pale and quiet. She didn't mention the motel, but her hands trembled as she poured herself water. I asked casually if something was wrong. "Just a bad day," she mumbled, avoiding my eyes. I knew the truth and it empowered me. Laura's outburst had cracked their bubble of secrecy, and I planned to widen that fracture. I contacted Laura anonymously, using a burner email. I sent her a few of Carl's photos, careful not to reveal my identity. "You deserve to know," I wrote. I didn't need to say more. The images spoke for themselves. I knew Laura would act, whether by confronting Daniel again or taking legal steps. Either way, it would tighten the noose around their affair. Emily's phone buzzed constantly now, her face drawn with worry. She thought I didn't notice, but I saw everything. Meanwhile, my tips to their workplaces were bearing fruit. Emily mentioned a stressful review at work, her boss questioning her travel expenses. Daniel, I learned through Carl, was under similar scrutiny. Their perfect little world was fraying, and I hadn't even played my full hand. I felt a strange calm, a clarity I hadn't known since discovering her betrayal. Revenge wasn't just about destruction. It was about justice. Emily had shattered my trust, my life. Now, I'd dismantle hers, piece by piece, until she had nothing left to hide behind. The air in our house grew heavier, thick with unspoken truths. Emily's once bright demeanor dimmed. Her eyes darted nervously, her smiles forced. She thought I was oblivious, but I saw her unraveling. The motel incident with Laura had shaken her, and my anonymous nudge to Laura was a spark I knew would ignite more chaos. I checked my burner email daily, waiting for signs of Laura's next move. It came sooner than I expected. A court filing for divorce, public records showing Laura's name. Daniel was served papers at work, according to Carl's contacts. The news must have hit Emily like a tidal wave, but she hid it, burying herself in her phone, her fingers trembling as she typed. I kept up my act, asking about her day with feigned concern. "You seem stressed," I'd say, watching her squirm. "Just work," she'd reply, her voice tight. I knew better. Her job was under scrutiny now, thanks to my tips. Her boss had requested a detailed log of her client meetings, and I could tell it was eating at her. She'd stay up late, hunched over her laptop, trying to cover her tracks. I wondered if she suspected someone was watching, if she felt the walls closing in. I wanted her to feel that pressure, to taste the paranoia I'd lived with for months. Meanwhile, I deepened my plan. I contacted a hacker through a discreet online forum, someone who could access Emily's private accounts without leaving a trace. It cost me a chunk of savings, but money meant nothing compared to justice. The hacker delivered passwords to her secondary email and a cloud drive she thought was secure. What I found there was a goldmine. More photos, explicit messages, even a video of her and Daniel in a hotel room, laughing like they were untouchable. The sight made my stomach turn, but it also hardened my resolve. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a mockery of everything I'd given her. I didn't stop at Emily. I sent anonymized snippets of Daniel's messages to his firm's HR department, hinting at inappropriate conduct. The goal wasn't to get him fired outright, but to make his life a maze of suspicion and paperwork. I wanted him to feel the same suffocating dread Emily was starting to know. Every move I made was a step toward their undoing, and I felt a grim satisfaction watching the pieces fall into place. The next strike was bolder, riskier, but I was past caution. Emily's design firm was hosting an annual showcase, a glitzy event where she'd present her work to clients and industry bigwigs. She'd been preparing for weeks, her stress palpable. It was the perfect stage for her downfall. Using the hacker's access, I compiled a slideshow, not of her designs but of her affair. Screenshots of her messages with Daniel, blurred just enough to avoid legal trouble but clear enough to be damning. Photos of them together, their faces unmistakable. I embedded the files in a USB drive and mailed it anonymously to the event organizer, labeled Special Presentation Add-on. The night of the showcase, I stayed home, claiming a headache. Emily left in a sleek black dress, her perfume sharp and unfamiliar. I watched the event's live stream, my heart pounding. Halfway through, the screen flickered, and my slideshow began. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Emily's messages flashed across the screen. "I can't wait to see you tonight. He'll never know." Her face, projected larger than life, drained of color as she realized what was happening. The organizers scrambled to stop it, but the damage was done. Whispers spread, clients exchanged glances, and Emily fled the stage, her career in tatters. She came home in tears, claiming someone had hacked her. I played the sympathetic husband, holding her as she sobbed, but inside, I was cold. She'd humiliated me in private. Now the world knew her shame. Social media buzzed with speculation, her name trending locally. She tried to salvage her reputation, posting vague apologies about misunderstandings. But the industry was unforgiving. Clients dropped her, colleagues distanced themselves. I watched her spiral, knowing this was only the beginning. Daniel, too, faced fallout. His firm suspended him pending an investigation into ethical concerns. Their perfect affair was crumbling, and I was the architect of its ruin. Emily stopped leaving the house. The showcase disaster had stripped her confidence, and Laura's divorce filing kept Daniel at a distance. She thought I didn't notice her late-night calls, her whispered arguments with him. "It's over." I heard her hiss once, her voice breaking. I wondered if she meant their affair or her life as she knew it. Either way, I felt no pity. She'd chosen this path, and I was merely guiding her to its end. I escalated my efforts, targeting her personal connections. Using a fake account, I sent her closest friends curated snippets of her messages. Not enough to trace back to me, but enough to paint her as a liar. "Did you know?" I wrote, attaching a photo of her with Daniel. One by one, her friends pulled away. Her best friend, Sarah, stopped returning calls after receiving a particularly cruel message where Emily mocked her loyalty to me. I'd forged it, of course, using the hacker's access to mimic her tone. Emily's isolation grew, her world shrinking to our house, where I was both her comfort and her judge. At home, she clung to me, unaware I was her tormentor. "I don't know who's doing this," she'd say, her voice small. I'd nod, stroking her hair, my mind racing with the next step. I wanted her to feel utterly alone, stripped of the life she'd taken for granted. I started leaving subtle clues. A printed email from her cloud drive on the kitchen counter. A photo of her and Daniel tucked into her purse. She'd find them, panic, and say nothing, too afraid to admit what they meant. Her fear was my fuel, driving me to push harder, to make her pay for every lie. Emily's career was in freefall, but I wasn't done. She'd always been proud of her financial independence, her ability to contribute to our life. I decided to take that from her. Using the hacker's access, I uncovered her bank accounts, including a secret one she'd used for her affair, hotel payments, gifts for Daniel. I didn't steal her money. That was too crude. Instead, I orchestrated a subtler sabotage. I tipped off the IRS about irregularities in her freelance income, using details from her emails to make it credible. The audit notice arrived a week later. Emily stared at the letter, her face ashen. "This can't be happening," she whispered. I offered to help, playing the supportive husband, but I knew the audit would drain her savings. The IRS found discrepancies, unreported income from side gigs she'd hidden to fund her secret life. Penalties piled up, and her secret account was frozen. She couldn't afford a lawyer, not after losing clients. I watched her scramble, calling banks, crying over spreadsheets, while I quietly transferred our joint savings to a new account she couldn't access. "For our future," I told her, and she nodded, too broken to question it. Daniel wasn't spared. I sent his firm evidence of his misuse of company funds, receipts from hotel stays billed as work expenses. His suspension became a termination, his reputation shattered. Laura's divorce proceedings exposed his assets, leaving him with nothing but legal fees. I imagined them both, Emily and Daniel, trapped in their separate hells, unable to lean on each other. My revenge was a symphony, each note precise, each chord devastating. Emily was a ghost of herself. The audit, the lost friends, the ruined career. She barely ate, barely spoke. Our house, once a home, was a prison of silence. I watched her waste away, her hazel eyes dull, and felt a twisted satisfaction. She'd betrayed me, dismantled my trust, and now she was paying the price. But I wasn't done. The final blow needed to be personal, undeniable. A wound she'd carry forever. I planned a confrontation, but not the kind she'd expect. I invited her parents to dinner, claiming I wanted to support her through her struggles. They arrived, concerned but unaware of the truth. I prepared a package, printed emails, photos, the video from her cloud drive. As we sat at the table, Emily forcing a smile, I slid the package to her mother. "You should know who your daughter really is," I said, my voice steady. Emily's fork clattered to the plate, her eyes wide with horror. Her parents opened the package, their faces crumpling as they read. Her mother gasped, her father's hands shook. "How could you?" her mother whispered. Emily tried to explain, her words tripping over lies, but the evidence was irrefutable. Her parents left without a word, their disappointment a blade sharper than any I could wield. Emily collapsed, sobbing, begging me to forgive her. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, but I only stared, my heart a stone. That night, I packed a bag and left her in the house, alone with her shame. I didn't file for divorce, not yet. I wanted her to live with the wreckage, to wake each day knowing she'd lost everything. My revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about justice, about making her feel the weight of her choices. As I drove away, I felt no joy, only a cold clarity. She'd broken our vows, and I'd broken her world. Leaving Emily in that house was like closing a book I'd never wanted to finish. I rented a small apartment across town, a sterile space with bare walls and a single window overlooking a parking lot. Suited my mood. Empty, functional, a place to plan my next steps. I didn't miss her, not exactly, but I missed the life I'd thought we had. The quiet was deafening, broken only by the hum of my laptop as I monitored the fallout. Emily's social media went dark, her profiles locked or deleted. Her friends' group chats, which I'd infiltrated through the hacker's access, buzzed with pity and judgment. "She's a mess," one wrote. "Serves her right," another replied. I felt no guilt, only a grim confirmation that my work was thorough. Carl, the private investigator, kept tabs on her. She rarely left the house now, her car gathering dust in the driveway. When she did venture out, it was to the grocery store or a therapist's office, her face hidden under a hoodie. I wondered what she told the therapist. Did she admit her betrayal, or did she spin a tale of victimhood? Carl's reports painted a picture of a woman unraveling, her once vibrant spirit crushed under the weight of her choices. I didn't pity her, but I wasn't celebrating either. Revenge was a cold companion, satisfying but hollow. I turned my attention to Daniel. His life was in shambles, jobless, divorced, and ostracized. Laura had taken their son and moved to her parents' home, leaving Daniel in a rented studio apartment. Carl's photos showed him haggard, unshaven, a far cry from the charming art director in Emily's pictures. I could have stopped there, but I didn't. I sent an anonymous package to his former colleagues, filled with evidence of his affair and financial misconduct. The industry was small, word spread fast. Daniel's name became toxic, his career a memory. I wanted him to feel the same isolation Emily did, to know the sting of a life dismantled. My nights were spent refining my plan's final stages. Divorce was inevitable, but I wanted it to be surgical, leaving Emily with nothing but regret. I consulted a lawyer, a sharp woman named Rachel who specialized in high-conflict cases. She reviewed my dossier, emails, photos, financial records, and nodded approvingly. "This is airtight," she said. "She won't have a leg to stand on." I didn't want her money or her pity. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions, legally and permanently. Rachel and I spent weeks crafting a divorce strategy that would maximize Emily's loss. Our joint assets, house, savings, investments were substantial, but I'd already moved most of the liquid funds to a protected account. Rachel suggested a fault-based divorce, rare but devastating in our state. Emily's affair, documented meticulously, was grounds for disproportionate asset division. Adultery can sway a judge, Rachel explained, especially with this evidence. I provided everything, the GPS logs, the cloud files, the motel photos. It was a chronicle of betrayal, and I wanted it presented in court, her shame laid bare for the record. I served Emily the papers through a process server, ensuring she couldn't dodge them. Carl watched from a distance as she opened the envelope, her face crumpling. She called me that night, her voice raw. "Please, can we talk?" she begged. I hung up without a word. Talking was pointless. She'd had years to be honest. Now she'd face the consequences in a courtroom. Rachel warned me that Emily might fight back, claim emotional distress or manipulation, but my evidence was ironclad. She'd need a miracle to counter this, Rachel said. I didn't believe in miracles, not anymore. I also targeted Emily's remaining professional ties. Her firm had sidelined her after the showcase fiasco, but she was clinging to freelance work. I used the hacker's access to sabotage her portfolio website, embedding subtle errors that made her designs look amateurish. Clients noticed, and her inbox, which I still monitored, filled with cancellations. I didn't stop there. I sent an anonymous tip to a design blog, detailing her unethical behavior with blurred screenshots. The post went viral in industry circles, cementing her fall. Emily's identity was tied to her work. Stripping it away was like cutting out her heart. Daniel faced similar ruin. I leaked his termination details to a rival firm, ensuring he'd never work in the city again. His LinkedIn profile, once a beacon of success, sat dormant, his connections dwindling. I imagined him and Emily, two ghosts haunting their own lives, unable to escape the consequences of their choices. My revenge was a web, each strand tightening around them, and I was the spider at its center, patient and relentless. The divorce hearing was a cold, clinical affair, but to me it was a battlefield. Emily sat across the courtroom, her lawyer a nervous young man outmatched by Rachel's ferocity. I'd instructed Rachel to hold nothing back, and she didn't. She presented the evidence with surgical precision. Messages, photos, the video, each exhibit a blow to Emily's defense. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, watched impassively as Emily's lawyer stammered through weak objections. Emily kept her eyes down, her hands clasped tightly, as if she could will the truth away. Rachel called witnesses. Carl, who testified about the motel incident, a former colleague, who confirmed Emily's unprofessional retreats. I took the stand last, my voice steady as I recounted the betrayal, the lies, the pain. I didn't look at Emily, but I felt her gaze, heavy with desperation. The courtroom was silent when I finished, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Emily's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of circumstance, but the judge wasn't swayed. "This is a clear case of marital misconduct," she said, her tone final. The ruling was brutal. I was awarded the house, most of the savings, and full control of our investments. Emily got a small portion, barely enough to start over. The judge cited her infidelity and deliberate deception as factors, a legal stamp on her shame. As we left the courtroom, Emily approached me, tears streaming. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I walked past her, my heart a fortress she'd never breach again. The victory was mine, but it tasted like ash. Revenge had given me justice, but it couldn't rebuild what she'd destroyed. Daniel's fate mirrored hers. Laura's divorce case exposed his financial recklessness, leaving him with crippling alimony and child support. I heard through Carl that he'd moved to a cheaper town, working odd jobs. His downfall was a footnote in my plan, but it completed the symmetry of their punishment. They'd both lost everything: love, reputation, stability, and I'd insured it. Life without Emily was a new kind of solitude. The house, now mine alone, felt like a museum of our past. I sold it, unable to live among the ghosts of our memories. The money funded a fresh start, a condo in a new city, a job with a rival accounting firm. I rebuilt methodically, but the scars remained. Friends asked if I was okay, and I lied, saying I was moving on. The truth was I didn't know how. Revenge had consumed me, and now that it was done, I was left with an emptiness I hadn't anticipated. Emily's life, from what I heard, was a shadow of its former self. She'd moved to a small apartment, working low-paying design gigs under a pseudonym. Her parents, still reeling from the dinner confrontation, kept their distance. Her friends, once a tight-knit circle, had scattered. Carl's final report showed her alone, her days a cycle of work and sleep. I didn't check on her anymore. I didn't need to. The damage was permanent, a wound she'd carry as long as I carried mine. I thought about Daniel less, but his ruin was a quiet satisfaction. He'd tried to rebuild, taking freelance gigs, but his name was poison in the industry. I'd made sure of that. Their affair, once a secret thrill, had cost them everything, and I was the unseen hand that tipped the scales. I didn't regret it, but I wondered if I'd lost something in the process. A piece of the man I used to be, the one who believed in love and trust. I kept the dossier, locked in a safe, not as a trophy but as a reminder. It was proof of what I was capable of the lengths I'd go to protect myself. I didn't plan to use it again, but its existence grounded me, a tether to the justice I'd claimed. The world moved on, and so did I, but the echoes of my revenge lingered, a quiet hum in the background of my new life. Months later, I sat in my condo, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the city skyline. The anger that had driven me was gone, replaced by a strange calm. I'd won, but victory came at a cost. I'd dismantled Emily and Daniel's lives, but I couldn't rebuild my own trust, my own heart. The fortress of our marriage was rubble, and I was left sifting through the debris, searching for meaning. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Emily had started therapy, trying to piece herself back together. Part of me hoped she'd find peace, not for her sake but for mine, a sign that I could let go. Daniel, I learned, had left the state, chasing a fresh start. I didn't care enough to follow up. Their story was over, and mine was beginning, though I didn't know what it would hold. I thought about love, about whether I'd ever trust again. The idea felt distant, like a language I'd forgotten. But I wasn't broken, not entirely. I'd survived betrayal, wielded revenge, and emerged whole, if scarred. The dossier stayed in the safe, a relic of my justice. I didn't need to open it to know its weight. It was a testament to my strength, my resolve, and a warning to anyone who might cross me again. As the city lights blinked outside, I raised my glass to the man I'd become. Not the husband Emily had betrayed, but the one who'd fought back, who'd reclaimed his dignity. Revenge hadn't healed me, but it had freed me. I was ready to move forward, to write a new chapter, one where I was the author of my own fate.